Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Kieran Sage, a she, they, any pronouns as long as you're cool about it. I'm gonna be talking about all the books I read in June today as a treat. I feel like I literally just did the wrap up for April and May like 2 days ago, but that's not true. June has flown by so fast. So I guess I will just jump into it. I carried over some of my Alex Larkspur reading right after I've read Sweet and Wild. Fun fact, Sweet and Wild is actually going to be having a cover reveal on the 7th and is coming out on the 29th of July. So that's very fun and very exciting. I will be reposting all of the things that Alex posts on their Blue Sky, and it's going to soon be real. I'm soon going to be able to get my hands on a physical copy of Sweet and Wild, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. I actually read a work in progress that Alex is working on, which I'm not going to say too much about, except it's about a healer and a bodyguard, and I love them so dearly. Alex was asking for some advice on a couple of different things, and so I read all of it, and it was very good, and even with it needing tweaks and not having an ending yet, 4 stars. 4-star read. I had a very good time reading The Healer Work in Progress by Alex Larkspur. Follow them on Blue Sky, by the way. It'll be linked below. I believe it's Apples in Cinnamon. I'll probably put it on the screen too. Probably. It's probably like right here now. So I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about it except letting you know that I love Alex Larkspur's writing. And I'm not biased at all. And even if I was, they write such fantastic stories, and I love every single one that I've read, so that's all I have to say on that matter. And after Alex brought me back into my reading era, I had a slew of books that I was partially through, and I finally picked them up again and finished them rapid fire. One of those was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, which I read the first chapter of for my American literature class. It's a true crime book, nonfiction, and it is a narrative nonfiction, which Truman Capote actually kind of pioneered as a type of journalism, which is very cool. However, I do have my own reservations about that, but it is about the true real-life murder of the Clutter family in Holcomb, Kansas, and it's interesting, but the problem with Truman Capote and In Cold Blood in particular is that he got very close with one of the murderers, and you can kind of tell. It's very clear that Truman Capote had more nice things to say about Perry, the murderer, than he had about Dick, who was also involved in the murders. So that always gave me a weird feeling reading through it. Did not like that very much. And I don't rate nonfiction. It just feels weird to rate nonfiction, especially true crime nonfiction. Was the writing good? Yes. Do I think it is the most ethical way for Truman Capote to have written this? No. The way that Truman Capote tried so incredibly to make Perry such a sympathetic character in the story, while also the whole basis of it being the fact that Perry did murder a whole family with no cause, really? Interesting. Interesting thing to do, sir. And there's also questions of whether even the quotes that are meant to be true are true. There's a lot of controversy about whether or not Capote made things up to further sell the story. There's statements from people that Capote says that he interviewed, which he did interview, but that those things never really happened, and that's not great for a book you're saying is nonfiction. But that's my main thoughts about it. I did enjoy reading it once I got into it. It is very slow, but it is a more interesting way to look at nonfiction. But I also feel weird about reading true crime nonfiction as a person who used to watch a lot of true crime, and it starts getting icky after a while, and once you start having critical thinking, it's like, oh, how ethical are you guys being behind the scenes? So that's the second book I read in June. Now we're back to fiction that I can talk about. I'm going to talk about Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, which I have very conflicting feelings about, but I'll give you a quick summary first. Dance of Thieves is marketed as an enemies to lovers romantasy, and it very much qualifies as romantasy. Don't get me wrong on that. Questionable enemies to lovers. So the hero of the story is a man who recently has come into power after his father died suddenly from an illness. And the heroine is a like roguish thief type. She's a specialized soldier essentially for the queen of her country, which is separate from that other guy that just became king. Separate from that guy. There's a lot of really interesting political dynamics in this one, like the question of sovereignty for Jace, who is the hero's country, as well as the political machinations that are behind the reason why Cassie, our heroine, went to that country. And it's just really cool on the fantasy aspect of things. The problem that I had is with the romance itself. I went into Dance of Thieves expecting an enemies to lovers. I love an enemies to lovers. This is a duology, by the way. This is the first book in a duology. And I love enemies to lovers. I love that. However, very quickly, the tension is broken and they are enemies. I wouldn't even really call them enemies at the start. They are political rivals, sure, but it very quickly, they come to an understanding politically, at least they think they do. There's a lot of lying and scheming and withholding of information throughout this book, which makes it fun, but they're not enemies. They're like constantly kissing throughout the book. And I don't feel like that's a spoiler to say for a romantasy, but they are like saying they love each other very quickly. Don't tension break like that in an enemies to lovers. They're not even enemies at the start. She just kind of like humiliates him a little bit in public and then he's over it very soon after. I love enemies to lovers romances. And I really, really hate when they're not done well. The tension is everything in an enemies to lovers romance. And to have that like really high stakes levels of tension that I want out of an enemies to lovers romance, it can't be a will they, won't they want each other within like the first 100 pages. And that's what I have to say on the romance aspect. The political, I really enjoyed the political aspect of this book. This world is very well fleshed out and has a lot happening behind the romance, although the romance does take front and center, which is why it's a romantasy. I did end up giving this 4 stars on Goodreads, but I say it's probably about like a 3.75. The political machinations behind everything really brought this up for me. So if you can handle some of the lackluster romance that is at the front and center of this book, I think you would have a fun time. But I also think that there's probably better things for you if you're in a romantasy for the fantasy part of it, because the romance in this one isn't that great. Because they broke the tension so soon and there was like barely any tension in the first place, it really feels like their relationship is built on nothing, because it kind of is. There's like moments and glimmers of like what I could see to be like a really good romance, and then they just kind of break apart as the story continues. So yeah, 3.75 stars. Not bad. I will probably read the second one just because I want to know what's happening politically and like magically in the fantasy world aspect, but I'm not reading it for the romance. I'm so sorry. I know this is a favorite of some of the YouTube girlies. Then I finished a series. I love whenever I finish series because it means I can take it off of my series TBR and I don't add anything to it, which is always great because I'm constantly in the middle of a series. I have so many manga series, like the next volume in the series, on my list, and it's like, that's overwhelming. I should get to my series more often. So the series that I finished was actually the Strange the Dreamer series by Laini Taylor, and I finished it with Muse of Nightmares, which was not, in fact, bad. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be bad. I really enjoyed Strange the Dreamer, but not nearly as much as I loved Muse of Nightmares. So Muse of Nightmares picks up where the first book left off, which I can't really talk too much about because it's spoilery for the first book. So if you haven't read the first book, I'm not gonna like give you a full summary or like hook for the second one because there's spoilers in there. But what I will say is there is a lot of interesting world building that happens in this one, and it really fleshes things out and makes me curious about all of Laini Taylor's books and how and if they are interconnected. And that is all I'll say about that part. I do have another one of Laini Taylor's books, The Daughter of Smoke and Bone, I think. So I'm excited to pick that up because it's been on my shelves for a long time. And I think it may have come out before Strange the Dreamer, but I'm not actually sure. So I am excited to pick that one up now that I know that I really like Laini Taylor's writing. So that's exciting for me. I did end up giving this one 5 stars. I had a really good time with it, and because of how out there it got in the world building and the character development of some of the characters that I liked the least actually in the first book, it really like tied the duology together really, really nicely. But I would love to see more things in this world, which is why I'm also like, I hope there's other things within Laini Taylor's writing that like alludes to the same things that Muse of Nightmares does. And then I read Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wang, which is a horror book. I have conflicting feelings about this one too, because I almost wish that the description stuck with me more. This is a book about, I'm just now realizing, I don't know if the narrator ever gets named besides like a fake name that her job gives her. So I'm gonna call her the musician. So Natural Beauty is about a musician who is really struggling through some like personal issues with being a caretaker while also struggling with money. And it's a very interesting look at like a person who is rising above their social strata in an unconventional way, in which the narrator of this book gets a job suddenly from a beauty company and becomes like one of the faces, one of the like sales people of this beauty company called Holistic. And this is a really interesting commentary on the idea of Eurocentric beauty standards. For one, it's very interesting in that facet, but also this idea of perfection and what that means in a beauty context when people look so different. And it's just so good. The descriptions, there's one of them that really sticks with me, but like for the most part I wish more of them did. I like to like be truly like grossed out and disgusted by my horror, especially whenever it's a horror focused on the body horror. That's what that's called. I'll get my words out eventually. There is also an interesting relationship that the main character has with a woman named Helen, and I really enjoyed that. I think genuinely the description on Goodreads kind of sums this up in the best way without really giving too much away, because I feel like so much of the story is a twist in and of itself, and I don't really want to talk too much about it and ruin some of it, you know? It's very much a twisty, turny. It's also categorized as like a thriller, so it's really hard to talk about thrillers because everything is leading up to that same kind of mystery that they're uncovering. But I think the like description for this book, the blurb, if you will, says it best. It explores questions of consumerism, self-worth, race, and identity, and leaves readers with a shocking and unsettling truth. And I agree with that. I think that's very solid. I ended up giving this book 4.25 stars. There wasn't anything in particular that I didn't like about it. The writing was good. I just had a hard time getting into it. I enjoyed some of the dual timeline things happening, but I almost wanted more out of it in like the horrifying descriptions category, out of the story almost. I wanted some bits and pieces to be a little bit more fleshed out. It felt like it ran together very quickly, which like it's a thriller, it's a horror book. I know that they tend to be a lot shorter, but I like my books long. So I need more. And then I actually finished an arc back in June. It's so exciting for me personally. Next, I read We Who Have No Gods by Liza Anderson, which I also had conflicting feelings about. I don't think there was very few books this month that I wasn't like, I really like this, except for, so, it happens some months, it happens. I am sometimes very critical of books when I read them and sometimes I'm not. This month I kept coming away from books feeling a little bit disappointed for one reason or another. So We Who Have No Gods is a book about Vic Woods, who is just a regular human woman. She is the sole guardian of her younger brother, who gets whisked into this magical world where people fight demons. Or not even really demons, they're called orcans, but demons is like a good way to describe them as a whole for the casual consumer. It then quickly turns into a very much dark academia. This is a school setting, but it doesn't really have dark academia vibes to me. I was getting a lot of Shadowhunter vibes, and I almost wish there was more school-y bits to it. Vic finds out, and has always kind of known, that she doesn't really have any powers, even though her brother does, and she, despite the rules against it, ends up staying in this castle to learn, because somebody in charge wants her to learn, despite a whole lot of people wanting her to get out. There is a romance subplot. It's kind of prevalent, but then, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't think that romance is the front and center here, but there was very much a subplot happening that is integral to the story. And that is with Alexandros Zan. I said that weird. Zan, who is like a high-ranking soldier in fighting against these orcans. There is things happening behind the scenes that people are trying to pull Vic in to cause problems, essentially, and it's a fun read. I had a really good time reading it, and I read it fairly quickly once I like sat down and like actually read like a chunk of it, and then I was like zooming through it. I was having a hard time getting out of my reading funk. Which happens. It's an up and down cycle. But yeah, so I didn't even say, these guys are witches. These magic people I've been talking about, they're witches. They just call them witches. And I respect that. I love a witchy book. The like vibe of this book is very like, what is life, what is death, and the veil in between, and I love that stuff. The only problems that I really had with this book is that the heroine falls into that same kind of trope where she is meant to be this strong, independent woman, and she has shown prowess in a whole bunch of areas that indicates that she should be able to protect herself even against orcans, so if the case may be. However, there is no real development in her throughout the book, like combat-wise against orcans. She becomes a damsel in distress around them, which really frustrated me a lot because it was just constant after every single one, and who would sweep in to save her but Alexandros. I don't know why I keep saying his name like that. He's not called Alexandros throughout the rest of the book. It's literally, he's called Zan. But I really like the name Alexandros, I guess. I think that the romance, well, didn't feel like it had a super good basis. It was like solid enough. I didn't expect much out of it because as soon as that man popped up, I was like, that's the one. That's the one that they're gonna spend the whole book convincing me that they're meant to be together. And honestly, they do have some chemistry. I just think they have sexual chemistry and not necessarily romantic chemistry. Damsel in distress. That ended up being a 4-star. I'm still uncertain exactly about how I want to rate it. There are a couple of other things where the orcans and their descriptions are taken from folklore, and there is a specific instance that I went, wait a minute, you're not supposed to use that word, and I don't feel great about you taking from a whole bunch of different cultures and then repurposing their folklore for your fantasy lore. It just didn't feel great to me, but it is not my place to judge that myself, although it is something that I am concerned about as a reader, and it did like take me out of it, and I had to take a step back and be like, Did not like that. And it is specifically a Native American folklore creature, which, icky. It did give me the ick. So that was another big thing that I didn't like about it. So with that, I'm like somewhere in between a 3.5 to a 4 star because I did really enjoy reading it. I don't know if I'm gonna pick up the next book though, which is why I'm hesitant to give it a 4 star. I don't think I cared enough about the characters in it, even if the world was really cool. It's also set in like modern times. I think it's like an ambiguous modern times, or it may just straight up be set in 2025. I think that if this sounded cool to you, if you like a classic damsel in distress moment from a strong, independent woman, this might be for you. It wasn't like a perfect read for me. This book does come out on January 26th, 2027. I got my ARC from NetGalley, but if that's something that you're interested in, if all of this sounded cool or you think you can overlook some of the problems that I had with it, more power to you. Add it to your list, keep it on your radar. And then the final book that I read in June was City of Bones by V.E. Schwab, which I'm a V.E. Schwab fan. Love V.E. Schwab. The first thing that I read by Schwab was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I fell in love. And then for one of my young adult classes, or maybe it was children's, I don't really know, I read Gallant, which I also really loved. I think Schwab's writing style is just very nice and punchy while still being like spooky, and I love that. So this is a middle grade book, and it is about Cassidy Blake, who can see ghosts. Her parents are ghost hunters with the like classic, you got the skeptic, which is her dad. He's very into the research and historical stuff of their ghost hunting. And then you have her mom, who is kind of the believer. She believes in ghosts, she seeks them out. And yeah, it's very fun, like as a fun setup. And they just got a TV show deal, and so Cassidy's going to be traveling with them throughout the world, and first place we're going to stop is Scotland. In Scotland, Cassidy has an interesting time with her ghost best friend as they travel through Edinburgh. So as they travel through Scotland, they are having a grand old time, and the veil is very thin there. And Cassidy is, for the first time, experiencing unwillingly going into the place between. And without any spoilers, there is some very fun ghosty stuff, but there are some like problems, and it's such a quick and fast-paced read that it's like, I don't want to spoil things for you. It's a ghost book. She's constantly being pulled into the realm in between, and it's a fun time. I really liked this. I thought it was very fun. The only problem that I had with it is very characteristic of a 2018 contemporary book. It's set in the modern day at the time. And that problem is constant Harry Potter references. There are several chapters in a row of just talking about Harry Potter. Like, it's not the main thing that's happening, but like it's constantly referenced throughout the entire book all the way until the end. And it did drive me a little bit crazy. And I just think that's something you should know before you hop into this book. I don't know anything about the rest of the series if it remains prevalent, but it did take me out of it every single time, and I had to like work to get back into the vibe for it. But if that is something that you can more easily overlook, especially from something from that era of like, we didn't know the way that she is, then I think it's a fine read. It's a very quick, fast-paced horror, thriller, fantasy kind of vibe, and if you can overlook it, you'll probably have a good time. It was a different time. I did end up giving this like 4.5 stars. I had a good time. It wasn't like super revolutionary, but I know I would have eaten this up as a middle schooler, so gotta give it its due. And with that, that's the end of all the books I read in June. I read 7 books, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. I read 7 books. And so I have some gaps in my TBR now that need to be filled. I'm not gonna just list out all of the books on my TBR from last time that I didn't get to in June. Instead, I'm just gonna tell you about all the fun new ones that are on there. So some new additions. I have a new nonfiction book on my TBR. I want to read Nuclear is Not the Solution, The Folly of Atomic Power in the Age of Climate Change by M.V. Ramana, which I can't find anywhere on Libby, or I'm gonna have to buy it, essentially. It's not in my library, it's not within my library, like my state's library system. I'm gonna have to buy it. So nonfiction might take a backseat for me. This is the problem I always have with nonfiction, is that I can never find the ones that I want to read. It's unfortunate. Some of the other books that got put on my TBR are Vow of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, which is my romantasy slot. And then I am trying to make more of an active effort to actually finish the series I'm in the middle of. So whenever I have an open slot, I scroll through my series TBR first and then see if I can slot anything into my TBR off of that. So the one for horror that I have is Trojan X Volume 4, which I don't remember if I don't know if I remember enough to just hop back into it, but I'm gonna try. And if not, then I'm gonna reread 1 through 3 and then hit number 4. And then for my fave authors, because I knocked that one out with V.E. Schwab, I want to read the short story The Unwanted Guest by Tamsin Muir, because I haven't read it yet. And it's a little short story that takes place in book 3 of the Locked Tomb series, I think. I think that's this one. Then for my series TBR, I wanted to pick up Tunnel of Bones by V.E. Schwab. I tried to only add like easier reads to my TBR this month, just because I've been having a hard time getting through some of the books that I really want to read but that are just chunkier. So I'm trying to like build up my momentum again. And then those are the only slots that I had open, but I did accidentally end up with more arcs that I need to read and review. But I've got Morbid Curiosities by S. Hottie and Forgive Me Not by Mari Costa. So I'm very excited about that. I think Forgive Me Not is a graphic novel too, so I'm very excited. I don't read a lot of graphic novels. I do read, well, I guess I read a lot of manga, but I haven't recently. So I've got some shorter reads on my TBR again that will help balance out some of the chunkier books that still remain and have remained for months. So thank you so much for listening to me yap for simply way too long. I don't think this is nearly as long as the last one, but I could be surprised. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe and maybe even comment. Give me book recs. They'll go on my humongous TBR. It's like 2,000 books long. I'm never going to be able to read all those books, and I'm constantly adding to it. It's a problem. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.